Jamie, I got a question on Instagram from one of our listeners the other day. He said, hey, I'm reaching out for some travel advice. If you have the time, I appreciate it a ton. Looking to take a trip to Hawaii with the wife here in the next couple months. I currently hold the Chase Sapphire Reserve, the Amex Platinum. I'm taking advantage of the annual travel credits. I also have the Delta Sky Miles Reserve with Amex, as well as the Bilt credit card. And I've got points spread across multiple platforms, Amex, Delta, Bilt. Any suggestions, tools, or resources that I can use to maximize the value of the points? This is one of the most common questions we get, Jamie, and it's a good one because it means that they're playing the credit card hobby correctly. They're building up their points and their miles, and they've got the cards. And now it's like, okay, well, how do I actually implement this? How do I actually put this to use? So I thought it'd be useful today if we kind of talked about some tactics and strategies that you and I use. Not that we're professionals at this, like there are probably people who are even way better than this, but there's a couple websites out there that I wanted to highlight that I use to kind of just start the planning. And it depends on the trip that I'm taking and like where I'm going. But these are some resources that I find myself using quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the first step for me is determining what is most important. Is it this location, this hotel, or I don't have flexible leave? So I need something that is warm and tropical beach-like at these dates, and it's only these 5 dates. Or am I looking for something like, oh, I'm open to anywhere in Asia and like a long 6-night stay in anywhere in October. So it's really hard to do it all perfectly, but you have to kind of prioritize like what's most important. Do you want to do business class in the A380 for the first time, or do you want the overwater bungalow in Bora Bora? You might not be able to do both depending on how you've set up your points.
Yeah, and I think that's really important there, Timmy, is like, don't let the points tail wag the vacation dog. So if you want to go to Japan and you're like, okay, honey, we can go to Japan, but it's going to require 2 stopovers and we're going to be in Fiji for 2 nights. And your wife's like, well, I don't want that. I just want to fly to Japan. There's a direct flight out of LA. Like, what are you doing right now? Make sure that, if you're an optimizer, that you're not trying to get the most value out of your points and causing the most human stuff crazy possible.
And the planning commitment that comes with it. So this can really, like, warning to the optimizers. Spencer and I live this often. We're doing it right now as we're planning a vacation. You can easily spend hours and hours and hours planning the perfect vacation and forget to hang out with your family in the meantime, or forget to go for a walk or go to the gym. So just balance that. We want you to have a great vacation. We want you to enjoy your credit card points. That's why you have the rewards built up, is to use them. Just don't go overboard. And maybe you don't optimize every detail of your vacation. But Spencer, what's the first website or the first step that you do when you're ready to start planning a vacation?
So I usually start on Flight Connections. So it's flightconnections.com. Actually, there's a couple sites that do this, but that just shows me. So if I know that I want to go to, like, for instance, I'm thinking about a trip to Nepal in the future. So I can go to Kathmandu, click on Kathmandu. It's going to show me all the airports that have a direct flight to Kathmandu. So in this case, I'm looking and I know it's Doha, so that's Qatar Airlines. It's Dubai, so that's Emirates. Singapore, so Singapore Airways. And that kind of narrows my search right there, because I know that those are all transfer partners on various credit cards, points and miles. And so I'm looking now like, okay, could I fly from Auckland to Singapore to Nepal? What would that look like? And usually once I kind of figure out where the direct flights are, then I go to Google Flights and I start looking at timings. And usually what I'm trying to minimize my travel time, right? So if I fly through Doha, it's going to be a 24-hour day to get to Nepal. Ouch. Like, that just sounds super painful. It doesn't matter what class of travel I'm in, business class, first class. But if I go to Singapore, I can see, oh, okay, there's only a 2-hour connection in Singapore. And so it's an 18-hour travel day. And that sounds a lot better to me. No, that's 6 hours of my life that I'm getting back.
I love Google Flights too. That's usually my first stop. I've not used Flight Connections personally. Is the free version of that good enough, or do you use a premium version to get the best data?
I use the free version. I'm not afraid to pay for different apps, and we'll talk about some of the apps and websites that we pay for. But for that one, I just use the free version. If you do pay for it, I think you get some more visibility into like flight schedules, because that's the thing, is some flights are seasonal, right? They only fly during certain periods of the year when there's demand. I just use the free version of Flight Connections, and Google Flights is always free as well.
I'm sure there's listeners that are like me where I'm getting ready to plan like a multi-$1,000, $5,000, $10,000 vacation or whatever, but I'm really resistant to spending $699 to get the features to make the planning easier. And I don't know, what it is about that mindset. Maybe I'll call Daniel Kopp and explore that with him. But it's like, if you're no kidding investing to a bucket list vacation, some of these premium features might be worth investing in to make your planning easier, maximize how much time you're having to spend on it, and the best way to get data, especially as we look at that. So don't be afraid to maybe budget a little bit of your vacation money into the tools to make your vacation awesome. But like you said, Spencer, Google Flights is one that is free. It is like my go-to. What do you do when you start there? Because some airlines, they only fly a couple times a week. You want to look at your connections, your total travel time. There's a lot of ways to filter and sort. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, some of the things that I'll do, right, is I'll start putting in like nearby cities. So like, I don't necessarily have to fly into Tokyo, right? Like maybe I could fly into any city on the main Japanese island there. And so you can start adding like multiple destinations. And then that just gives you like more options. Like, oh, maybe there's a better timing flight or a cheaper flight, or somebody's going to sail on. And if you connect through Sydney or something, all of a sudden it becomes you can go the whole way in business class at like a very reasonable price. Other filters I'll throw on there are show me direct flights only. So I don't want any stops. Sometimes I'll filter like I want to take off at night. So like show me anything after, like 2:00 in the afternoon so that I can try to sleep on the plane. Let's see, other filters that I've used on Google Flights. You can look at the calendar view. I think that's a really good one too. And one thing that I'll do is I'll say, show me direct flight only. And then I'll go to the calendar view and I'll look, where are there actually direct flights? Because like you said, sometimes an airline, like for instance, Qantas and Air New Zealand fly direct from Auckland to JFK in New York City, but they only do it on certain days of the week. So you could go in there and you could filter, and you can even filter by airline too, which depending if you can transfer points to an airline, that might be valuable.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not sure what airline, I want yet, but other times I'm like, I don't want Spirit, or, eliminate all the airlines, like Spirit and Frontier or things like that. I love the grid feature they have where you can kind of look at plus or minus a date. And there's also one, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a bar graph looking thing where you can do, I want a 6-day trip, and you can scroll through on that cost. And if you set up your filters and then look at that, it'll kind of give you a date window to target, because it might be in some cases easier to pay for a 7-night stay instead of a 6-night stay if it saves you, $600 each on your airfare or whatever. So just remember to be flexible with that, play with the options. The one downside of Google Flights, in my mind, especially if you're a domestic connection, is you have to be careful about basic economy fares. One hack to do that on some of the airlines is to add one carry-on bag, but then some of the airlines, it doesn't filter out basic economy. And on my phone, I think it's a test feature where I can say exclude basic economy, but on my computer, I can't. So just pay attention to basic economy and don't get screwed by that. Spencer, what about incognito mode? Are you doing any of this in private browser or incognito to avoid cookies or different fares based on where you are?
I really don't buy much of that. I mean, sometimes I'll check it, but I think that a lot of the sites are very smart now, right? They're filtering by IP address or location. And so the whole like clearing your cookies thing or using incognito mode, that's like a tip that like your grandmother's gonna offer. I don't really see much value in that. You're about to offer that tip, aren't you, Jamie?
No, I wasn't. I will say I don't like searching like delta.com or united.com because they email me immediately after or within a couple hours like, hey, you forgot to book your trip to Tokyo or whatever. And so I'm like, I don't want them linking that to my rewards number and knowing, because then I know, just like me talking about something near Facebook being on someone's phone, I'm going to get ads bombarded by me. You buy one piece of clothing and next thing you know, everything on the internet's about clothing. And I'm like, no, I just bought a t-shirt. I don't need to be bombarded by t-shirt ads. So Google Flights is great. And then once I do that, I can start to see a plugin that I like on Google Flights is Points Path.
Pull up Points Path. I was just going to mention one other thing, Jamie, is the flight alerts. So I've used this a ton where, let's say like there's a city pair that you're looking at and kind of the dates, and you can set it up such that, it's going to send you an email anytime the price drops. And sometimes what I'll do for this is I'll book, especially if there's a good deal out there. Like I just did this with Qantas. They were having their global sale and I was able to book round trip business class flights, and the cancellation fee is only $250. So then what I do is, so I book them, and then I was able to go in, set up a Google flight alert for that route. And if the price drops by more than $250, I just cancel the original tickets and then rebook with Qantas. And I was able to do that earlier this year and save over almost $1,000 because I set up a Google flight alert. And so it pinged and said, hey, that flight you were looking at just dropped by $1,000. And so I was able to cancel the original tickets and then rebook the new ones.
That's a good hack because, airlines, even as simple as Southwest, you can rebook. American Airlines recently, I got some points back. So it helps kind of automate the tracking of it, kind of like Hotel Slash does for the hotels, which maybe we'll talk about in a second. But Points Path is a Google Chrome plugin that's free to use. You do have to register for an account, but it's free. You add it to Chrome, and then it will add a column to Google Flights results with points options, and it'll say use points or use cash based on the value of it. That's something that's been pretty nice. I've been able to find pretty decent domestic redemptions, and it will recommend points or cash on that. I don't have a lot of experience booking that on international flights, but you can search for that and it'll add a column for potential points redemptions. Doesn't mean it's the most efficient. I think it will default to the airline's points. So there might be transfer partners you could use to maximize your points a little bit more, but pretty easy to have.
Yeah, nice. I like that. I haven't used that one. So let's talk about points since you brought it up. So a couple places that I like to start searching. So once I've kind of like found either like the airline or the flight or like the general itinerary that I'm looking at, then I'll jump over to a couple different sites. So I usually start on Points Yeah. That's YEAH.com, pointsyeah.com. So I'll start there. And the great thing about Points Yeah is it lets you search, I think it's 22 loyalty programs at this time. And I actually do pay for that one because you get a couple more searches and you also get to have save searches. So it's kind of like Google Flights where it'll alert me if a flight and award ticket becomes available or if an award ticket drops in price. So that's been super useful where, especially because award tickets are almost always fully refundable, taxes and fees, points, everything. So I'll book an award ticket. Like I just did this the other day for a United flight. It was 300,000 points. I set up a travel alert. It dropped to 180,000 points. So I canceled the 300,000 point ticket, rebooked at 180,000 points. And now I've just saved myself 120,000 United points. The other site I like to use is points.me. So American Express actually has done a partnership with them. So I think it's amex.points.me you can go to. And that just lets you search for flights, travel transfer partners of American Express that you can search for the flights on points.me. And let's see, in terms of points, that's kind of where I'll start, unless like I've found a route or an airline that I'm like, for instance, put a trip to Nepal. If I'm looking at Singapore, then I'll just go to singaporeair.com and start poking around and seeing like which states, if there's availability. And usually for most points programs, the farther out you're searching, the more availability you have. As you get closer, stuff starts to tighten up in terms of availability. And like I found that the sweet spot is usually like anything more than 6 months, 6 to 9 months out. And it depends on the route too. So like one of the most popular routes that I almost always find availability is the New York JFK to Frankfurt on Singapore Airways. So it's a fifth freedom flight, meaning that they go from JFK to Frankfurt to Singapore. They stop in Frankfurt for gas. And on that leg, I almost always find business class availability on Singapore Airways. And so I know that like if I need to get from New York to Europe, I'm almost guaranteed to book on there. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll book at like 80,000 points per seat on that leg, knowing, so now I have that in like my back pocket as like a backup option. And then I'll go look for like other award availability because I almost always have points sitting over at Singapore Airlines.
So Spencer, that website is amex.point.me. It's just singular one. It took me a minute to find why I couldn't open it. And that one's good because it'll give you other options for transfer partners and things like that. So the flight might be on United, but it'll say, hey, book it with Singapore instead. One of the most frustrating things about flight redemptions, which I'm sure our listeners know, is you might be able to find one seat or one really good redemption, but two is a challenge, or a lot of times over two is going to be like darn near impossible unless you're looking at the day they release the seats. And especially if you're booking it through a transfer partner, usually they release 1 or 2 seats on those transfer partner redemptions. So if you're trying to book a really great redemption value like Dallas to Doha in Q suites for 70,000 American Airlines points, you're probably not going to be able to get 5 of them but you might be able to get 2 of them depending on the day. So keep that in mind for expectations as well. Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back to the show. Hey, Spencer, I've heard about this free Amex Platinum card for military service members. Where can I go to learn more about this?
Great question, Jamie. I've got the Ultimate Military Credit Cards course at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. It's a 100% free email-based course, and I explain exactly how to verify your eligibility for credit card annual fee waivers with the Military Lending Act, or MLA, and the Service Members Civil Relief Act, or SCRA. The Ultimate Military Credit Cards course is a beginner's guide to travel hacking and opening up your first annual fee-waived credit card while you or your spouse serves in the U.S. military. There's no spam, no fluff, and the only emails you'll get from me are related to military credit cards. You can unsubscribe at any time, and there's zero cost to you to sign up. You can sign up right now for free at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. Again, militarymoneymanual.com/uniform Mike Charlie 3.
And now back to the show.
One other tip I wanted to share, Jamie, on booking flights is if you're going to book cash, always try to book directly with the airline. So I've seen this all the time, and this is a mistake not mistake, but just a learning that I had when I first was starting my traveling journeys is like I'd go to kayak.com, for example, and I'd book the flight through Kayak, and it would be operated by United, right?
It's like the most boomer thing I've ever heard you say.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but now what the problem is he just introduced this like third party into the transaction. So rather than you just booking directly with United.com, which almost, I would say 9 times out of 10, the price is the same or cheaper for booking directly with the airline, you've introduced this third party. And if the flight is on time and everything goes fine, cool, great. But when flights get delayed or flights gets canceled, or you want to change anything about the booking, you're going to go to United and they're going to say, nope, you got to talk to your travel agent, Kayak. You're going to go to Kayak and they're going to say, nope, you got to talk to the airline directly. And you just get into this like catch-22 of like, I don't know who I need to talk to, but I need to talk to someone to resolve this problem that I have. And nobody wants to take responsibility for it. On the other side, on the flip side, if you book directly with the airline, it's almost never a problem. Like you can make almost all the changes in the app, or if you do need to talk to someone, it's a single confirmation number. You've made the contract with them and they're going to help you out with it. And the customer service is 10 times better than it would otherwise be.
For sure. One time, my wife and I missed a flight on American Airlines going to Cancun a few years back, and we had booked it through Costco Travel. We did the whole vacation, and it was a nightmare to get that switched, to then drive to Charlotte and go out of another airport because it was the same thing. Couldn't do it in the app like everyone else in line. We had to go to Costco, then had to call American on our behalf. As disaster. So wholly supportive of that. It also enables you to get, sometimes if you do have to cancel, you can at least get a flight credit with the airline instead of it being like a kayak.com gift certificate or a non-cancelable thing. So big fan of that. And especially when you start talking about hotels, a lot of them now want you to book direct so much that they won't give you things like free Wi-Fi or free upgrades or even points towards your status or like Hilton or Marriott points unless you book direct. So pay attention to that. The last thing I just want to say on points before we go to maybe hotel side, I think is where we're going next, is that look at what you can combine. We're going to have a podcast on this coming up soon, but you can sometimes combine points with airlines or with your flexible travel rewards earning cards like Chase and American Express. So just Google, like, can I combine Hilton points with my wife, or can I combine Delta points with my wife? United has a points pooling feature. Some of them don't allow it at all. So just look that up and you might be able to have twice as many points as you think, because it's also paying if you're all on different reservations. So if you can, booking them on one reservation, one confirmation number is more convenient. Should something change, they can all rebook you together.
I'll just mention two more things here, Jamie, is like booking through travel portals, right? Through like Capital One or Chase or American Express or Citi. Sometimes it's worth doing because, you're going to earn extra points, or maybe you're using your points, right? If you're going through Chase, you're using the Chase points boost where you can get up to 2 cents per point on certain airfare or hotels. But again, you're introducing that third party, and it can create just a little bit of confusion if you ever need to modify or cancel anything. And so I try to almost ability to not do that unless that's my last best option. And then the other thing is, and I just had a family member run into this. So they were flying on Air Canada, but they found the flight through United.com. So they booked through United.com. It was operated by Air Canada. And then when the whole Air Canada flight attendant strike happened, they got back into that hot potato situation where Air Canada said, talk to United. United says, talk to Air Canada. And the whole thing could have been avoided if they just found the ticket on United.com, but they saw in the little fine print, it says operated by Air Canada. Go to aircanada.com and book the ticket directly with Air Canada, unless there's like a significant discount by booking it through a third party, which there almost never is. So that would be just one other travel tip there. Okay, let's talk about hotels. So if this wasn't confusing enough trying to book a airline ticket, now we can talk about using points, free night certificates, cash. Where do we start, Jamie?
This is really tough to do to get it good. Like I said earlier, you have to balance your need for the perfect airline or the perfect hotel. Very difficult to do both. But I typically go to the hotel website, or if I know I have a bunch of Hilton points to redeem, I'll go to Hilton.com and search for the area. You can also use websites like Booking.com to kind of get a feel for the area and see what's out there. If you're unfamiliar with the area or you don't know what hotels are there, a more broad search like Booking.com may be helpful. And it also includes more short-term rentals and apartments or condos for lease instead of just Hilton hotels. But if you know, I want to redeem my Hilton free night certificates or I want to redeem Marriott points, then I like starting there with a flexible night search, or just going to the website, searching for the city, and then turning on the points redemption and seeing what options I have. And you might sacrifice, like, I just got a killer redemption on the flight, so I'm willing to not have a killer redemption on the hotel.
Booking.com is great. I think Marriott and Hilton both have, and Hyatt and IHG, actually all four of the big American brands have really easy point searching. And, they'll show you like the map too, right? Like if you're going someplace like New York City and you're like, okay, I want to be in Midtown, you can kind of like look at the map and see like, okay, well, this hotel over here is 20,000 points per night, but this one over here is 60,000 points per night. But the 20,000 points per night is actually in a better location for what I'm doing. So, that just kind of helps you get an idea of like the area you're going to. And then what is points.yeah or pointsyeah.com. I'll throw them out again. They do have I think they're building it out. It's a bit rudimentary, but they do have a hotel points searching site. So you can search on there. I just use that for a trip to Fiji that's coming up. And yeah, I think the flexible calendar page, I think that's a really good resource too, where you can kind of pull up the availability. If there's like a specific hotel you're looking at, you can pull up the availability and say, okay, like if we stay there, say you're going to Hawaii for 2 weeks and you're like, oh, I don't really care which island that we stay on first. You can go and look and say, oh, the Hilton Grand Wailea has, standard room rate availability the first week, but they don't the second week. So I'll stay there the first week and I'll be able to use my free night certificate and I'll be able to use points. Another site that I'm gonna shout out two sites. One is hireaspire.com. That's a great site for using your Hilton Aspire credit. And then the other one is MaxFHR, so maxfhr.com. And what both those sites do is they look at the whole pool of available hotels. So the Aspire one is just for the Hilton. And then FHR is any of the fine hotels and resorts. And this credit, the rumor is that this credit is going up to $600 per year, so $300 per semi-annual period. So I think a lot of people will get a lot of value out of using maxfhr.com if you hold the Platinum card from American Express, the MX Platinum card. And Jamie, FHR, I think I slept on it for a lot of years, but now that I have more flexibility and I like staying in fancier hotels like the Four Seasons, I'm getting a lot of value out of this credit because not only, especially even like a one night stay, because you're getting the breakfast, you're getting $100 property credit, you're getting a potential room upgrade, and you're getting guaranteed early check-in at noon and guaranteed late checkout at 4:00. So you're getting 28 hours in a hotel. You're paying $300 less because you're getting an FHR credit. And by the time I've stayed at some of these hotels, like I stayed at one in Sydney the other day, we ended up paying $65 cash, but we got free breakfast. We got the $100 credit. They were paying us essentially to stay at this awesome, I think it was a Park Hyatt or maybe it was a Four Seasons in Sydney. So the FHR credit on the Amex Platinum, especially if you're like stationed overseas and you got some nice fine hotels and resorts near you, this could be an excellent use of it.
And depending on the length of your stay, also pay attention to some of your benefits where a lot of cards or a lot of brands will give you buy 4 nights, get the 5th night free. I know some Hilton, some cities have that. And so really that could be a huge bang for your buck if you get a 5th night free kind of benefits on any of your programs.
2 other apps I want to shout out, seats.aero and expertflyer.com. These are more advanced. Seats.aero is really good. It's kind of like pointsyeah.com for searching for award availability. And then Expert Flyer is really good for like looking at like seat maps and seeing like for example, like on Air New Zealand, I'm often bidding on upgrades and I can see like, hey, is business class empty? You know, like I'm very likely to get an upgrade, or is it completely full and there's no chance that they're giving me an upgrade? Again, it's just like more information. I think it's like $10 a month for Expert Flyer and the same for Seats.aero. I mean, you could very quickly start spending like $100 a month on all these apps, and you don't need to. Like the free version is usually good enough. Or what you can do is like if you have a big trip coming up, you buy it for a month, and then as soon as the payment goes through, you just hit cancel, and then it gives you 30 days of access, and then it automatically shuts off after 30 days. And I think that's a great way to do it. And make sure that you get the receipt emailed to you, because what happens, of course, for me is like I forget to turn them off. And after like 2 or 3 months, I'm like, okay, I'm tired of paying this. I'm just going to log in and cancel it. And I think that's a good way to do it. Airbnb and VRBO. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention those sites as well, just for finding. It's different. It's not hotels usually, but you can find some really cool properties to stay in there.
Whenever I do a subscription, before I hit confirm my order, I will tell my phone in 3 weeks, remind me, or before December 1st, remind me to cancel that subscription. So put it in Google Calendar, set a reminder in your phone right away so you don't. But even if you invest $100 in subscriptions to maximize your vacation, it might not be terrible. Another free one I like to use is SeatGeek. And this will allow you, this is real nerdy, but it'll allow you, if you know the type of airplane you're flying on, you can look at which seats you want. And so, for example, in some business class, it might be like these two are next to each other and they're better for couples versus angled away, so you have more privacy. Others are like, hey, this seat's really loud because it's right next to the lavatory, or this one doesn't actually have a window even though it's a window seat. So this exit row doesn't recline because it's the first of 2 exit rows. So SeatGeek is a good one to check out your seats as well.
The most champagne problems that my wife has ever complained about is we booked Singapore suites. So we literally had like a 400 square foot like apartment to ourselves in the sky, but the beds weren't close enough together, so we couldn't cuddle. And meanwhile, in business class that we booked for her parents, we had specifically booked cuddle class. So like the lie flat beds can be put together. And after that, my wife has never stopped complaining about Singapore suites and how she would rather have been in Singapore business class. So lesson learned there, never splurge on that again. But she will say that the caviar service in Singapore suites is her death row meal. Like if she can have one last meal, it would be the caviar service in Singapore suites. So yeah, pretty good. Not too shabby.
I will say there's another subscription service I've tried before. Point.me has a option to get expert help. I want to say it's like $200 per ticket per person. They'll basically do all the research for you, is kind of the thing they sell. But because I had already looked at it, and they basically came back as like, hey, your only option's United because you're not flexible on your dates and you're not flexible on your airport. And so I would say if you're going from a big city like JFK to Rome, where there might be a lot of options, or LA to Tokyo, they could probably do a lot of the research to figure out the best options for you. But if you're on kind of a more vanilla redemption or you only have a bunch of United points or you only have a bunch of Delta points, I don't think that service really worked out great for me, but it was as beneficial as they would help me like log in and walk through, transfer my points from Chase to United, and they'd walk through all that. But in the end, the one that I did was so strict that they weren't able to find any extra options other than what I already knew about. But it was good to see. And if you have I'm all in on this bucket list trip, then maybe you do hire some help to look at your options so you're not wasting hours and hours on planning it.
I find the same thing, Jamie, where like usually I'm like frustrated that I can't find a good redemption, and then I go and book one of those services and they just return the same redemptions that I found. And I'm like, no, where are the secret redemptions that you're holding back? And they're probably just using all the same tools that we just recommended, right? Especially for a beginner, it might be good to purchase one of those services and have them kind of walk you through like how to transfer your points. But on pointsyeah.com, I think it has like screenshots and it kind of like walks you through. And when it does its search, it says like, hey, like, you know, you can book this with United points, but you can also just transfer Chase points to United and you book it that way.
Okay, Spencer, I think the last thing I want to encourage a listener to look for if they're ready for this tactical deep dive into the mission planning of points redemption is transfer bonuses. So sometimes both Amex, Chase, and Citi, all of them will have temporary bonuses where it might be instead of 1-to-1, 1 point of Amex points to 1 point of Singapore points or whatever. It might be a 1.2 or 1.3 or sometimes a 2 bonus or 3 bonus for hotels. So just do a quick look before you decide which points you're going to use at the current bonuses. You can even Google it and find articles from like NerdWallet or other websites that'll say the current bonuses. But just give that a quick peek and make sure that there's not extra, like 20 or 30% bonus on your points would be huge if you're planning a big redemption like this.
So there are tons of resources out there, Jamie. There's, YouTube videos. There's podcasts that do a lot better job than we do.
Not true.
No, not just. There's tutorials. There's lots of accounts out there that you could follow and deep dive into this stuff. But I think the important thing to remember is why you're doing this, right? Like you're doing this to make memories with family and friends and have a great time and explore a new place and travel a bit. And maybe don't, if like you can't find the exact perfect redemption, that's okay. Save it for next time. And, we only have limited time, limited attention to give in this life. And if you spend 10 hours trying to find the perfect United redemption, that's 10 hours of your life you're never going to get back. So it can be fun. It can be a hobby. But don't let the tail wag the dog, and make sure that you focus on what's important and what's meaningful.
And we're curious, listeners, like what's out there that you guys use that we didn't mention. If you have other ones that we can share, DM it to us on Instagram at Military Money Manual or email us at podcast@militarymoneymanual.com. Because I know there's some real nerds out there that probably have some tips that we didn't mention. We'd love to share them with our audience.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.